Hello, this is Chelsea, and we are here in Herbology 101. This is our first class today. We are going to talk about sage and peppermint. We are also going to talk about tea. So welcome to class. Let's do a quick overview so that you know what we're going to be doing during class. So first of all, you should have your workbook or your notes pages. You should have those downloaded by now, hopefully, and have them with you. There's a few things that you can do with those. First of all, in class, use them to take notes while you're listening to our lectures. In the herb profile sections, and the user census sections, and in the preparation sections. After class, you can use these notes pages to review properties, and you can use your preparation notes to help you decide on your final project. And then finally, on your own, there are spaces for you to draw the herbs that we study, and I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to leave, if you can upload those to our classroom message board so that we can see them. I'd love to see them. And it's a lot of fun to be able to share those with your classmates. So that's a little bit about your notes pages. Let's talk about, so I mentioned your final project. So for your final project, what you're going to do, you're going to create one of the preparations that we learn in class. You can use any herbs you like. In fact, I encourage you to use herbs that we don't talk about in class so that you can expand your knowledge a little bit. And then you will present this. You will write a paper. Since we're in the self-paced version, you're going to write a paper and upload that. I'm going to give you a link at the end of class for you to do that. Tell about what the preparation was that you made, what herbs you used, why you chose those herbs, what the preparation is for, and you can use any of the preparations that we discuss in class. We're going to talk about teas, tinctures, tonics, syrups, oils, and salves. So we'll talk more about that as we go through, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing for the end of our class. So another thing that I want to discuss with you is what we're going to be talking about in class. We're going to be talking about primarily what the characteristics of the herbs are. This includes common names. Herbs usually sometimes have several common names, and their common names might be the same as other herbs, but they're only going to have one botanical name. So that's why we talk about both the common names and the botanical names. We talk about the properties of an herb, and these have names, sometimes antiviral, antiseptic, antibiotic, and what they are, they give you an idea of what that herb can do. And once you learn these, especially the basic ones that we're going to learn in class, the cool thing is you can pick up any herb book and open it up, and if you're looking up an herb, you don't know anything about it, but you know your properties, you can look in that book, and as soon as you see those properties, without really even reading too much further, you already know what that herb can be used for. You have an idea about what that herb is all about before you've even read that entry, if you already know your properties. So that's something we talk about. Of course, we also talk about uses, how herbs are used, and naturally we talk about folklore and fun facts, different things about the herb that are kind of interesting or historical, things like that. So that's just a little overview of the course, of what we're going to do during the course. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So we always start off with properties. Sometimes these have big, funny names and complicated definitions. So I like to do them first, and we can get them out of the way. The thing I always tell my students is, even if you can't say the word, I want you to be able to recognize it. So don't stress too much if you can't say it. But it's good to be able to recognize it. Like I said, when you pick up that book and you look in that herb book, You want to be able to recognize that so you know what that plant can be used for. So today we have 6 properties. We end up with fewer and fewer as we go through the class. And so these will be the most that you will see through the entire course. So let's go over them. The first one is astringent. Astringents cause the body tissues to contract. Now, sometimes you will see this as you're walking down the face wash aisle at the store. You'll see the word astringent because, you know, sometimes we want our face to look nice and tight and our pores to look small and our face to look smooth. So we use an astringent. They can also be used internally as well, and they have other uses other than just for the face. So that's our first one, astringent. The second one is tonic. And what a tonic does is tonic strengthens your body, helps the body function normally. Sometimes you might hear of people using a spring tonic in the spring to help with the change of the seasons. 100 to 125 years ago, there used to be a tonic for everything. We don't see that so much anymore. But they're sort of starting to make a little bit of a comeback. We'll talk more about this in our third class. Our third class is actually about tonics, so don't want to go too far into this just yet. So our third property for today is carminative. And a carminative is something that expels gas and releases pressure on the gastrointestinal system. Well, what does that mean? So in basic English, all that means is that it helps you burp and it helps you fart. And so if your stomach is upset and you're not feeling good and you've got all that pressure on your stomach, what you need is a carminative. So the next one is an antispasmodic. Okay. An antispasmodic, the definition is something that controls spasms and convulsions. Typically when we talk about, or most herbs that we are going to talk about that have this property, when we say control spasms, we're talking about something within the stomach, something like colic or upset stomach issues. Sometimes we hear spasms and convulsions and we think of something like epilepsy. If you're having some type of convulsion, you're epileptic, please go to the doctor first. But when we're talking about it in this context, typically what we're going to be talking about is things within the stomach. So the next one is a stimulant. And I bet if you think that you can probably guess what the most famous stimulant is. Usually I have a cup of it on my desk. Surprisingly right now I don't. But the most popular stimulant is going to be caffeine or coffee. Chocolate also has caffeine and is a stimulant. Any type of soda with caffeine in it is a stimulant. And a stimulant is something that stimulates the nervous system or other parts of the body. It gives you energy, it gives you stamina. Some stimulants are stronger than others. Coffee is a pretty strong stimulant. What we're going to talk about today is a slightly milder stimulant. So the last one for today is a stomachic. And a stomachic, as you could probably guess from the root of the word, is something that helps with the stomach. It helps improve stomach function. In some cases, it also helps increase appetite. So if you have gone through these and you've listened and you still have questions, please feel free to leave me a message on our classroom message board. If you need any type of clarification, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. But for now, let's go ahead and let's get into herbs today. So we're going to talk about sage, and we are going to talk about peppermint today. So one thing I always like to do with my students is to have you use your senses. By starting off this way, we can really get a feel for what the herb's properties are, or what the herb might be related to, and kind of get an idea of its uses that way as well. So peppermint, probably everyone has tasted peppermint. It's one of the most common herbs, one of the most common food flavorings. Sometimes when we talk about the smell and the taste. We hear words like refreshing or cooling, or sometimes even a little spicy, because it can be that kind of cooling, be so cool it kind of burns a little too. So those are just a few words to describe peppermint. Now, as far as look and feel, now peppermint is obviously a mint. However, it's slightly different in look and feel than a lot of plants in the mint family. The leaves are a little smaller. They're also a lot smoother. Things like catnip or spearmint or lemon balm, they tend to have these bigger leaves, and they have a little bit more texture to them. Whereas peppermint leaves are very smooth. They tend to be smaller, but they are most definitely a mint. So let's go ahead. So that's just a little bit to kind of get you started thinking about peppermint. So let's talk about what we can do with peppermint. So first of all, peppermint, the common name is peppermint. Generally doesn't have any other common names. And its botanical name is Mentha piperita. There are several plants within this Mentha genus, and they all tend to be mints, like we think of mints, and generally most are edible. As far as properties, it is antispasmodic, and in this case, used for the stomach. It is actually a stimulant, a mild one, but a good one. It is a stomachic, and it is a carminative. So let's talk about some of the ways that we use peppermint. So probably one of the most common things that we use peppermint for is stomach ache. And I don't know about you, but when I was growing up and I had a stomach ache or even motion sickness, there was always some little lady around with her bag, and she would reach into that bag if I complained of my stomach hurting, and she would pull out one of these little candies, little round candies that were red and white. They're called Starlight Mints, and someone would give me a Starlight Mint. Oh, take that Starlight Mint, and your stomach will feel better. So, and it did, usually. So that brings us to candies. It's probably one of the most popular flavorings used in candies. I can think of several actually off the top of my head. Altoids, Starlight Mints, candy canes, peppermint patties, peppermint bark, all kinds of candies flavored with peppermint. We use it in hot chocolate a lot as a flavoring, and so it's a very common flavoring, and it's very common in candy. Peppermint gum as well. It's used also to help with headaches, and it actually works really well for headaches. I keep a little bit in a little roller bottle, a little bit of the oil, and if I have a headache, I can just kind of rub it along the top of my forehead and maybe on my temples, and it helps to kind of ease that tension in my head and make that headache go away. It's also a really good stimulant as well. It gives you a really good energy boost. I actually, again, another roller bottle of peppermint oil that I keep on my desk in the mornings. I often get up about 3:30 in the morning to teach, and because of that, I always need a little bit of a boost in the morning, and it just kind of brightens my mood and helps me get through my day. So it's not a strong stimulant like maybe caffeine or something like that, but it does kind of give you a little boost and a nice outlook on the day. So a little bit about folklore. So it turns out that early American colonists were actually very fond of peppermint tea because it wasn't taxed like other teas. I thought this was really interesting. I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense. So So that's just a little tidbit that I thought was really kind of fun and interesting about peppermint. So let's go ahead. If you have any questions about peppermint, again, post them in the comments and I'll be more than happy to answer them. So now let's go ahead, let's go on and let's talk about sage. Sage, the smell and the taste. It has a very deep smell, and it has a very deep, spicy, but not quite spicy taste. For me personally, it reminds me of Thanksgiving because our family uses it to make stuffing. I also know people who use it to stuff their turkey or to season their turkeys at Thanksgiving. So when I think of sage, it reminds me a lot of Thanksgiving. It reminds me of fall and the holidays, that smell and that taste. I also think of the smell of sage when it's burning. Some people you may recognize, we make sage smudges to clear out the energy in a house. And so that smell of burning sage is also pretty distinct as well. So now let's talk about how it looks and how it feels. So if you look closely at it, you can kind of see that it looks like it has little fur. It's a little bit furry. And when you touch that sage plant, it feels a little soft. It almost feels like leather. It's got thicker leaves, a little furry, a little leathery. So it's distinctive in some ways in the way that it looks and the way that it feels. So that's one good way that we know that we can identify it as well. So let's talk about sage. Now, the common name is sage. You don't hear many other common names. Sometimes you hear of different varieties of sage, but generally, you're just going to hear it referred to as sage. The botanical name is Salvia officinalis, and there are actually several plants within this Salvia genus. Not all of them are edible, so you have to watch that. In fact, some of them are poisonous. So unlike mint, where a lot of those mentha plants tend to be things that are edible, sage and salvia that salvia genus does not hold true in that case. So that's something you want to watch. Some sages are purely decorative, some can be eaten, some are actually poisonous. So a little something to watch. As far as properties go, it is also a stimulant, although I would say that's probably not its strongest property. It is astringent. In fact, it's highly astringent. And if you ever drink sage tea, boy, you can feel that the tissue in your throat and in your mouth tightening. It's a tonic, generally used for the hair. It's a hair tonic. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And it is a carminative. Now let's talk about how it's used. Primarily when we think of what sage is used for, we're thinking of things within the mouth, the throat, and the teeth. It's used to tighten gums for people that have loose gums, an astringent property. It's used for sore throats. It's used in issues of the mouth, sores, pain, cankers, things like that in the mouth. It can also help with the teeth. It can actually whiten your teeth. I've tried this before. You take rub sage and you mix it with a little bit of baking soda and a little bit of salt, and you use it to brush your teeth. It tastes terrible. And I think there's probably better ways to whiten your teeth. But if this is what you have and this is what you choose to do, you can by all means do it. I've done it before, but it's been a few years. I didn't stick with it for very long because it just doesn't have that great of a taste. It also treats a condition called hypohidrosis, and this is a really big word that just means you sweat too much. And because of that astringent property, it can help with this issue. You drink a cup of tea a day. and it will help you not sweat. And I've actually seen this happen before. I have a friend who did this. We did this experiment with him to see if it would work, and it did. It worked really well for him. So it is also used at times as a hair tonic to help grow the hair. Now, if you are going to use sage as a hair tonic, however, unless you want to darken your hair, then you probably should only use it if you have dark hair. Otherwise, sage will darken your hair. If you have light hair and you want to keep your light hair, chamomile or something like that would probably be a better choice. But if you have dark hair and you're trying to grow your hair out, then sage is a very good tonic for that. Some folklore and fun facts. So when we talk about sage, we think of sage symbolizing wisdom. And we often hear a wise person referred to as a sage. So let's go ahead. And if you have any questions, again, about sage, by all means, post them and I'll be more than happy to answer. So now we've talked a little bit about our herbs, and we are now going to talk about our very first preparation, the most basic herb preparation that you can make, and that is tea. So we're going to watch the video very quickly, and I'm going to turn off my camera so we can focus on the video. I'm going to stop that, and let's learn about tea.
Hello. So we are here in my kitchen today, and we are going to talk about tea. So first of all, what is tea? Well, tea is the second most common beverage next to water. And there's a few things that you may not know about tea. When we use the word tea, we are actually referring to a very specific infusion of a very specific plant, that is the Camellia sinensis plant. When you hear things like green tea or black tea or white tea, all of those are different levels of processing of the leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant. And you can see over here I have several different types of those teas. We'll get to them in a minute. Now, when we're using an herb to make a tea, what we are actually making is called an infusion. Now, an infusion is a preparation made from the leaves and flowers of a plant. I have several of those right here. And then finally, if we're using the bark or the root of a plant, we're going to make something called a decoction. And over here you can see I have a couple of things as well. So let's go back to this tea category here real quick. I have a few different types here. I have a few black teas. This is black tea with English breakfast tea, Earl Grey, Lady Grey, and Irish breakfast tea. And these are black teas, and they usually have some type of flavoring added to them, orange or bergamot, depending on what they are. I also have just a basic green tea in bags, and I have this is matcha green tea, and it is actually a powder. You can see inside it, you can see the powder in there. And you actually, instead of using like a tea ball or a tea bag, you mix this right in with your water, or sometimes I like to use milk as well. I have another just basic black tea. You can use this to make hot tea. You can use this to make iced tea. It just depends. I actually have used this to make kombucha too as well. So some of these are in bags. This is powder. You can also get black teas or green tea from True Tea in a loose tea form as well. And this smells really, really good. All right, so this has black tea with bergamot in it. Now let's talk about infusion. So when we are making an infusion, we're making a preparation that is made from either leaves or flowers of an herb or a plant. I have a few here. I have lavender, very popular, chamomile. Let's see. I've got, talk about this one, peppermint, sleepy time tea, which is one of the favorites of my childhood. I have rooibos tea, which is actually made from an African plant, kind of interesting plant. Then I also have this fruit tea sampler that I often give to my kids when they have snacks. It's got all sorts of things in it. Hibiscus, rose hips, chicory, orange peel, blackberry leaves, hawthorn, on and on and on. So all kinds of different herbs in this. And anything we would make from this category here would be called an infusion. Now let's move over here to decoctions. So if you want to use the bark or the roots of a plant, you're going to make what is called a decoction. You're dealing with a rougher material. It takes longer to get the desired flavor and the desired strength from a root. So whereas with all of these over here, you might just bring your water to boil and then use it to make your tea, and probably only steep it for maybe 3 to 5 minutes tops. With this, you're going to want to boil your water, possibly, these are actually tea bags, possibly even boil your tea bags in the water, or boil your root, this is ginger root, in the water. And you're going to want to leave it for a lot longer than you're going to leave these. If you think you're going to make some ginger tea, one of my favorites is ginger, lemon, and honey tea. And if you think you're going to make that ginger tea from that ginger root, you're going to come back in 5 minutes and it's going to be ready just like you would a bag tea. You're going to be sorely disappointed. You're going to get a mouthful of hot water and it's not going to be very good. So a little different here. You're going to boil your water. With these guys, you're going to just bring the water to boiling and then you're going to put the water over your tea bag or your tea ball or whatever you have, whatever you're using. So that's just a little bit about different kinds of teas or different kinds of herbal preparations using plant material and decoctions using roots or bark. So let's go ahead, let's look at making 3 different kinds of tea. So we are going to make 3 different teas today. We are going to make one using loose leaf black tea. We are going to make one using a tea bag. And we are going to make an herb tea using tea bag today. We're not going to do a decoction today. I'm going to save that for another video. But you'll see in front of me I have a couple of teapots and then I have 3 different teacups. This is one that I use generally for special occasions. Probably one of my favorite sets. This is the one that my children and I use every day. This is one that I had imported from the Middle East many, many years ago, and this is actually the very last cup in this set. It's my favorite, and I generally try to protect it as much as possible. But I'm going to show you how to serve tea, and this is a chai glass. We call this a chai glass. So I'm going to show you how to serve your tea in a chai glass. We're going to make an herbal tea with just the tea bag in this glass, and then we're going to serve our loose leaf tea in our little fancier cup. So you'll see by all of these, there's little spoons. These two are the same. This one's a little different. These are called demi-tasse spoons, and they are made specifically for tea. And so let's go ahead, let's start with our loose leaf tea. So I am actually going to make our loose leaf tea, and I've got this little teapot right here. Put these back so we can see them a little better. All right, so the way I'm going to do this, I have just my little can of loose leaf tea, black tea, with bergamot. It smells absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to just use my demi-tasse spoon. You could really use a measuring spoon. We're going to put about a tablespoon into my teapot. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. So, and then put the lid back on so we don't spill it everywhere. Right here I have hot water. It was brought to a boil, just to the boiling point, and then shut off. I've had this tea kettle for a few years now, and it's really nice for making tea. It's also really nice in the morning when I make French press coffee, and then I don't have a giant coffee pod or have to have a separate tea kettle. I just kind of use all of this. I used to have a big samovar, which was this beautiful thing to make tea. Unfortunately, after several years of use, it doesn't work anymore, but this is what I use now to get hot water, and I love it. It works really well. So we're going to I'm going to do about 2 cups of water into our pot there. And I'm just going to put my lid back on, and I'm going to set it over here for just a few minutes to let that steep. Now, I'm also going to just make just a plain black tea from tea bags. We're going to put it into our little elephant here. And elephants are my kids' favorite animals, so that's why we have this teapot. So I'm just going to I'm not going to make a lot, so I'm just going to do 1 tea bag. These are called pillow tea bags if you've never seen them before, but you probably have. They're pretty common. I'm just going to put them down in there. And I'm only going to do maybe 8 to 10 ounces of water. In there, not too much. I don't want that much. So I'm not making. And I'm going to use this, my chai glass. I'll show you the serve it here in a bit. Alright, so let's go ahead, put him back over here to steep. And now, while we are waiting for our 2 teapots to steep, let's go ahead and let's do our herbal tea with a tea bag. So it is morning here. Personally, I have a little uplift. So I am actually going to choose peppermint. So peppermint actually can act as a stimulant, give you a nice little boost naturally, a little less harsh than caffeine. So with my peppermint, I'm just going to take my tea bag, instead of putting him in the teapot, I can just take my tea bag and put it in there. And then for a little bit of tea that I have left on there, give it a good stir with my demi-tasse spoon. And now with peppermint, I would probably add some honey to it. I might add sugar, but usually with the herb tea, I prefer to have some honey. So let's put that over there to cool. And let's come back to our, there. So let's come back to our loose leaf tea. And actually, I think it needs to steep a little while longer. So I'm going to set that there, and we're going to take a few minutes to let that steep, and then we'll come back. Okay, so we've let our teas steep a little bit so they have a good strong flavor. And now we're going to go ahead. I want to show you real quickly. If you'll remember, this teapot we put our loose leaf tea in. So when you go to serve this, you're going to need some type of strainer to make sure that your tea leaves don't get into your tea. Or sometimes people would let the tea leaves go in their tea. They'll float to the bottom. And they used to actually at the end of their tea, dump them out on the saucer and read tea leaves, read people's future in the tea leaves. It's called hazeography. So if that was something you're interested in, by all means, leave your tea leaves in. But for today, we are going to strain them out with a little strainer. So let's go ahead. Let's pour our tea here. There we go. All right. So we have a nice, strong cup of tea. It smells wonderful. I wish you could smell it. For a tea like this, I would probably add a little bit of sugar. In this, I just have some granulated sugar. You could use sugar cubes as well. And actually, when I was in Germany, and I've never been able to find them since, they made these wonderful rock sugar lumps. I have never seen them since. So if any of you out there have ever seen sugar lumps like that, these wonderful rock sugar lumps, leave me a comment and tell me where to get them, because I've never seen them since, but they were wonderful. So I add a little sugar. Some people might add a little cream. Of course, you can add honey to it if you would like. So that is our loose leaf tea. So far we have our herbal tea, our loose leaf tea. And so now I want to show you, we're going to use our chai glass. Now I'm sure some other people do it different, but most people I know that are inclined to use a chai glass, when the tea is served, it's served with a whole lot of sugar. It's very, very, very sweet, usually on the stronger side. I've seen people use cream in it, but I don't think that's as common. So we did just a plain black tea in our elephant here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to pour that in. So, you could probably see maybe a little stronger, but it'll be sufficient. All right. So there you go. 3 different ways to make your tea. Herb tea with a pillow tea bag, black tea with loose leaf tea, and then black tea bag in your chai glass. So I hope you have enjoyed this little film about tea, and I hope that maybe you've learned something. If you like our video, please go give us a like, give us a follow, leave us a comment, and if you find that sugar, let me know, because I'd love to know where I can get some in the US. And thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
All right, so hopefully you learned a little bit about tea. So let's go ahead, let's wrap up for the day. If you have any questions about tea, please, again, feel free to post them. Your assignment for this week is to post the answers to these questions. What is your name, or what name do you go by? Where are you from? What is your favorite herb? What is something that you want to learn about in class? And what is your favorite type of tea? Also, don't forget, if you do the drawings in your notes pages, please share those with us. You can take a picture and upload it. Or if you have trouble doing that, if you email it to me, then I can do that for you. And before we go, I just have one little quick video. He's only 1 minute long. This is Maccabee, and I love him. He's wonderful. He's from Jamaica, and he's been doing reggae music for years. However, recently, I think within the last 2 or 3 years, he started doing these wonderful YouTube videos about the benefits of different plants and herbs and fruits and vegetables, and they're really a lot of fun. So this is only about 1 minute long, so we're going to end with this real quick.
Greetings, welcome to Maccabees Medical Mondays. It's all about Sage. Welcome on stage, medicinal news, Sage's front page. Sage, welcome on stage, big up the herbs always. Yo, give Sage a round of applause. I think Sage deserves a few bars. One of the stars, a herb with the cars, definitely helps women with the menopause. Chatbot, help a sore throat, use it as a gargle, wash out your mouth. Too much gas, make that come out. Relaxation, it can promote. Really got a lot of health benefit. Antibacterial, antiseptic, antifungal, antibiotic, antioxidant, anti-that, anti-this. Not just there to give you food flavor. Sage means save. Could be a savior. Help your brain function. Help you remember. They're even researching it to treat Alzheimer. In a food, drink it in a tea. Oil, even using aromatherapy. People burn it against negative energy. They even mention sage with immortality. But if you're pregnant or a mother who a nurse, them advises to check with your midwife first or a qualified healthcare service provider. Precaution, she got a baby inside her. Yes, I am. Greetings, welcome to...
All right, so that was Maccabee. I hope you've enjoyed your first class today, and hope you get a chance to do your questions, and I will reply to them as you post them. I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.